Hey, it's Liz D'Alto, and this is the Untamed the Wild Soul Woman podcast. From body image, sex, spirituality, money and relationships, to motherhood, creativity, business, communication, and desire, Untamed the Wild Soul Woman is the place to come for real stories and powerful advice to help you reclaim and redefine womanhood in the 21st century. What's up, wild ones? Welcome to episode number 172 of the Untamed the Wild Soul podcast. I am your host, Elizabeth D'Alto. And before I introduce you to today's guest, Sean Croxton, I want to invite you on over to my Facebook page, facebook.com/Elizabeth D'Alto, for a Facebook Live series that I just kicked off about 2 weeks ago, if you're listening to this in real time. What I did was I pay attention all the time to the comments you leave me on social media, the emails that you send us, the comments and the reviews that you leave on iTunes, and also the conversations that you bring into our Facebook group after you listen to the podcast episodes. So I'm intimately familiar with the things that you're extra curious about and always wanting to dig deeper into, wanting more resources and things like that. And so this Facebook Live series is about those topics. So this past one that went live on May 31st was about integrating and harmonizing your masculine and feminine energy. And you know we talk about this all the time on the podcast if you're a regular listener. And I'm super passionate about helping people understand that this is not a gender conversation. This is about your energetics. This is about knowing yourself, understanding yourself, and being able to operate in the world in a way that optimizes who you are, how you express these energies, and how you integrate yourself as a fully functioning, capable, amazing human being. So head on over to my Facebook page to check out the series. It's facebook.com/Elizabeth D'Alto. And with each one, I also have a downloadable cheat sheet with some master notes and some extra resources, reading lists, card deck resources, all kinds of great stuff over there for you. So check that out. And now for today's episode. Pumped for this one. The subject is something I'm passionate about, redefining the 1%. On this podcast, you're well aware that we're about questioning our programming and conditioning and redefining ourselves, our beliefs, and our lives accordingly across all of the categories. So today's guest, Sean Croxton, talks specifically about success. Not in terms of getting what you want, but rather by focusing on what you're willing to give and who you're willing to become to get it. We covered moving through fear, doubt, and indecision, creating unlimited success. Again, that's success by your definition, not by what everyone else thinks it should be. Doing this from the inside out and letting go of the us versus them mentality. And that point is huge, by the way, because our social, our media, and our political climates right now are massively reinforcing that us versus them mentality. And that shit is not helpful. We also talked about how passions have seasons, and Sean even dropped some brain science on us, which was very interesting. So this episode is straightforward, it's practical, it's super motivating. Enjoy, 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 and let's get into it. Today I'm here with Sean Croxton. For those of you who are watching, Sean is wearing a unicorn shirt. Rather, for those of you who are not watching, but just listening. So he has set the bar already quite high for this interview, Sean.
How have I set it high? I think we're all unicorns. We're all unique. So I'm just, wearing my uniqueness on me. I'm identifying myself.
Okay, I'll buy it. But I'm just saying, you better be extra unique if you're going to wear it on a shirt. You know what's actually funny? I'm using a pen, a unicorn pen that one of my clients got me. So shout out Amy Sagiyama, who's probably listening to the podcast. Thanks so much for the pen. So, nice. Okay, first question we ask all our guests. What do you love about being a man?
I love that the opposite sex is women.
That's great.
Yes.
So, and concise too. Thank you. And by the way, there's a good number of dudes on our show who have said that. I love the...
Really? So that wasn't unique at all? That wasn't unicornish?
Strike one.
Damn. I got 2 to go.
It's fine. It's fine. But listen, that's not really what I'm excited to talk to you about today. I love... you've been in many directions in your career as an entrepreneur. You also come from the fitness world. I know you're still involved in health and wellness and things like that, actually, which is cool. Those of you who are listening, well, by the time you listen to this, they'll probably be sold out. But Sean, at the time we're recording this, has a new bar out, the JERF bar, which JERF is JERF, which stands for Just Eat Real Food. Took you 2 years to make that. So
yes.
the reason I bring that up is to say that you're in many different directions, but I love right now, the last time I talked to you, you were moving in this direction. I know you're working on a book, but it's all about redefining the 1%.
Right.
And this show is all about redefining all the things. So how did you land there? I know you're an avid reader. Again, for those who are watching, you could see Sean's massive bookshelf in the background. So how did you land around redefining the 1%?
It was just an idea that came to me one day because I feel like there is a consciousness or a way that only 1% of the population is that separates them from so many other people. There's a way that successful people are. There's a way that they take responsibility for their lives. There's an attitude that they have. It's a way that they want for everybody what they want for themselves. That they see failure as more of an opportunity than anything else. And I feel like 99, 98, 97% of the population don't see things that way.
Yeah.
And so when I came up with that idea, and actually I'm very soon going to be shifting away from that idea a little bit because I came up with something else that I even like even more. But when I came up with that idea, it just really fueled me inside. Because I just want to create this community of 1%ers who actually help make other people's lives better. Mm-hmm. And there's something that they can identify themselves with. Because these days, when you say 1%er to somebody, they think rich, greedy, doing bad things to society type of thing.
Yeah.
And honestly, I know a lot of people who are 1%ers, and the vast majority of them are really, really good giving people. So I'm trying to redefine what that means because, we've grown up with these memes of what being rich really is, what being successful really is. And a lot of that stuff isn't true. We just don't have a lot of us just don't have the experience with those type of people to be able to understand the error in our thinking about people who have been successful. So that's what I'm trying to point out. I
love this so much because I can relate in the sense of all the 1%ers I know, or at least the great majority, probably 95% of them are entrepreneurs, are people similar to me, whether they do similar things or they're just pretty sovereign. They do what they want to do. They're out in the world. And the common thing is these people are generous and they want to help others.
Exactly.
And so my association with 1% has kind of always been that. Or I have an uncle who's a cardiologist. But other than that, but I think the uncle who's the cardiologist is probably what a lot of other people's association is. So how do you lead that conversation? How do you bridge that gap for people?
By helping them to understand that a lot of what they believe about rich people or successful people is not true, that a lot of those ideas have been implanted into their brain, into their subconscious by the authorities in their lives.
Yeah.
When we were young, between birth until about maybe 7 or 8 years old, we were incredibly impressionable. When you actually look at the brain waves that are going on in our brains, between the ages of 2 and 5, we are literally in a state of trance. So when the people around us, our moms, our dads, our babysitters, the people in our church, the media are saying something about successful people, we tend to believe that. And we believe that with a very childlike mind. And we hold on to that. And even when we grow up as adults, we're still holding on to it.
Yeah.
We still want to cling to those beliefs when honestly, when you examine them, they really don't make any sense. They're really just plain nonsense. So helping people to understand where that came from is really key because, even when you really think about it, this is so perpetuated by the media.
Yeah.
Not to blame the media for everything, but you watch a movie, the example I like to use is Titanic. I think everybody has seen Titanic at some point in their lives. But what is it? The rich people are mad at each other, and there's a lady who has to marry somebody who she doesn't want to marry, and they're all snooty and right? And then who's below deck? All the poor people, and they're dancing, they're doing that whole thing. Or if you grew up with Gilligan's Island, there was Thurston Howell. And Thurston Howell was this really smug rich person, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If you watch, even more recently, you watch the movie Get Out. A lot of people are going to, actually it was a good movie. A lot of people are going to walk out of that movie going, see, I told you about crazy rich white people. You see what they do? And so it's perpetuated and it gets literally stuck in our subconscious and we become to be that person who believes that. And when we believe that and when we think that, that's how we act and we get the results that we have. So it's just really important to understand.
Something I never spent a lot of time thinking about before, but now that you gave those 3 examples is really probably one of the beliefs that a lot of people have is that either rich people don't have any fun or that rich people are assholes.
Right. Rich people have fun. they're not assholes.
Yeah.
Like you said, your rich friends, your 1% friends are incredibly generous.
Yeah.
My rich friends, I mean, I'm in the 1%. We talk about income. I've been in the 1% for the last several years, right?
Yeah.
I'm not an asshole, right? I'm not a greedy person. I'm highly generous because I think that, people who have tend to be givers.
Yeah.
And they don't give because they have to. They don't give like to trade, like I'm going to give so I get back. They just give because that's who they are.
Yeah.
Right? That's who they're being. And when you're being a certain way, you do the things that, in order to get what you want in life. That's kind of how it goes.
People on the show have heard me, if they listen consistently, have probably heard me say this before. But for many years when I was struggling to really get my business to a place where I could sustain myself and not have to have like my mom bail me out or do all kinds of things I didn't want to do just to be able to pay my rent, which that sounds like...
That's part of the struggle. I mean, that's real.
Yeah. That's the reality of it. But it was because... when I came into like the quote online marketing world, I was spending time with a lot of people who they were good people too, but I didn't love the way they ran their businesses. I didn't love the way some of them talked about the people they worked with and things like that. And so I just couldn't get into it. And then once I realized, if I stop going for the numbers and the metrics and this many people in the launch and this many people on my list, and I just focus on service,
yes.
The minute I made that shift, it was in September of 2013, making money became easy. And then it was just like not an issue ever again after that.
You found out where the money is. People are wondering where the money is. I will never be broke another day in my life because I know where the money is. The money is in service.
Yeah.
Period, point blank. The service, it's about going out there, knowing that people have problems and you providing the solutions for those problems and taking the responsibility to be the person who gives those solutions and doesn't blame other people for keeping you where you're at.
Yeah.
That's what a lot of people are dealing with right now. They're blaming their circumstances on other people and not really understanding or being able to accept the responsibility for where you are, right? Because really where you are in life is a choice. If you are broke or if you're barely getting by, the reason why is because you did not make the choice to be rich and you chose to be poor and you chose to barely be getting by because by default, because you didn't make the choice. There's a book called Your Greatest Power by John Cohey. And he says that our greatest power is our ability to choose. And so you don't have to choose to be a multimillionaire. You just have to choose to be rich. And what I mean by rich is just having enough money to be able to afford to do and to have the things that really make you experience life in the way that you want it. Because most people, they look at their lives, they go, this isn't the experience that I want to have. But they feel stuck in that experience because they've given responsibility to somebody else about that experience and haven't claimed it as their own. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. So I want to ask, what kind of environment did you grow up in around money, around success, like your own kind of personal experience with all that?
I grew up in kind of a mixed environment when it came to that. My dad was an entrepreneur. He actually sold shoes at Macy's during the week. And then on the weekend, he worked at the Oakland flea market selling like random stuff like fake Gucci knockoff sweatsuits and Rambo knives and butterfly knives and stun guns and all that stuff. And so I saw the pursuits. I saw a guy who really worked hard, a guy who was at the flea market with a big stack of cash in his back pocket. And I was like, oh my God, I can buy so much candy with that. So that was the influence until I was about 10. On the other side, and even with my dad as well, but on the other side, there's my mom where I learned some things from her growing up that I didn't realize that were holding me back. And it really took me to read Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by T. Harv Eker to understand these things, right? Because what I understood from growing up with her was the us versus them. Yeah. And again, I got something from my dad. There is us. We live this way. We can do these things. And there are those people who do not accept us for who we are. Right. There are those people who are exclusive and we're not allowed to hang out with them or to be with them. And so subconsciously, I developed this us versus them mentality. And if you grew up with this type of mentality, what happens to you when you want to become rich yourself? You think to yourself, oh, my God, I'm becoming one of them. Yeah. And you will sabotage the hell out of yourself. Another thing that I grew up with, and I can remember it very vividly, were lottery tickets. My grandmother, my aunts and uncles, my mom, it was all about buying those lottery tickets and that's where I got the understanding that in order to be rich, in order to have money, it has to happen to you. It's not something that you make happen. It's not something that you have any control over. You have to literally scratch the card, or you have to pick the numbers in order to get it, right? And so I learned these things that I didn't fully understand until I read that book. And when I read it, I was able to go, okay, let's unwind some of this.
Yeah.
You know, let's put these beliefs on the stand and cross-examine them and really show them, or show myself, that they really make no sense. You know, I know you talked about, I think you said something about rich people being greedy. I know a lot of broke-ass greedy people too. You know?
Yeah.
That's just the truth.
Yeah.
Right? I used to grow up with the idea that rich people were obsessed with money, that that was all they thought about. And one day, because I was reading Why You're Dumb, Sick, and Broke by Randy Gage, which is a great book.
It's a direct title.
Seriously, it's real shit, right? And I realized that I was far more obsessed with money than anybody I knew. All I thought about was money all day. It's like, okay, how am I going to buy shoes? How am I going to pay rent? How am I going to hang out with my friends and be able to afford drinks? How am I going to go out with this girl and be able to afford the date? That's all I thought about was money. And I will tell you, now that I actually have money, I'm no longer obsessed with it. Yeah. Right? Money doesn't rule my day. Money doesn't rule my consciousness all day, because I know how to get it. And like you said, that's through service.
Yeah. So super interesting. The money has to happen to you mentality. I also grew up in a house, lottery tickets. I specifically remember my dad's mom, you know, and just even the saying, maybe if we win the lottery.
Right. Yes. Yes.
Maybe if we win the lottery. Or even my mom worked at the same place for 30 plus years now, and it's always been a pretty demanding job. And she would say things like, I need to win the lottery so I could quit my job. You know? And that idea being implanted, that unless some outside force, which the likelihood of it happening, you need a miracle.
Yes. And here's the thing. If the miracle happens, if the miracle would have happened to your family, you would have lost the money eventually.
Well, there's been studies about that, right? Most lottery winners end up right back where they were, because that's the consciousness where they're at. Exactly.
It's their consciousness. Jim Rohn said this in one of my quote of the day talks. He said, if you take all the money in the world and you divide it up equally among the people, in 2 to 3 years, it'll return back to where it came from. That is so true, because when you get money like that, you don't have the consciousness to match it. Yeah. You will find a way to get rid of it. You will find a way to come back to your level of consciousness. If that is a poverty consciousness, you will stay impoverished. But here's the thing. If you won the lottery, now you've got taste for champagne. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So things really get screwed up. And, one thing I like to point out to people to kind of show and reflect how screwed up we can be when it comes to money is maybe 2 or 3 years ago, if you can remember this, when the lottery was like $1.3 or $4 billion. And with our society, who thinks that people with money are greedy, thinks that they're bad, there were lines outside of 7-Eleven wrapped around the block for the opportunity to become rich and wealthy. That's crazy to me. It just shows how screwed up we can be when it comes to money. Yeah. And it's interesting. I want to go back, and this might be a little controversial, but we're good at handling controversial here on the podcast. The thing that everything is a choice. I poke at that a little bit sometimes, because at some point in your life, and maybe it's because you had an entrepreneurial father, so you had someone hustling, I kind of feel like there needs to be, and you're welcome to disagree with me, by the way. That's cool.
There needs to be that first, the thing that wakes you up, that something else is possible. Because it's hard to make a choice that you don't know exists.
I got you. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I do a lot of studying on the brain.
Yeah.
And in order to take action on anything, sustained action on anything, you have to know that something is possible.
Yeah. Because there's literally not a pathway to conceive it or see it if you don't know it's possible, right?
You have to be able to see it. You don't have to have the pathway to get it yet. You don't have to know the how. You just have to know that it's possible in order for the brain to say, okay, let's go ahead and take action. So I hear where you're coming from. I'm not sure what the order would be on that to see that it's possible and then make the choice. Yeah. But I think that the idea is to rebel against your current circumstances.
Agree.
And say, okay, I need to be and do and have something different, because here's where things get kind of thrown off in the personal development space is we give people a list of instructions to do something. because we say we're going to have something, and then by having it, we're going to be it. But we got the thing flipped up. We got it totally flipped upside down. You have to be something in order to do something. If somebody gives you a list of instructions and you're not the type of person who does those things, if you haven't made the choice to be that person, then it's probably not going to happen. You're going to land yourself in the land of self-sabotage. And I've been there many times.
Me too.
Yeah, I think we all have, over and over again, until we make that choice, until that choice becomes more important than the fear. And we just start moving forward and plowing through the obstacles and understand that when we do hit those obstacles, that, that's just part of growth. And when we hit an obstacle and we think that failing says something about ourselves and our own identities, that's where we get screwed up a little bit. But we can shift our perception and change our point of view to say, okay, but when I did that, I was somebody who did that. I was somebody who made that mistake. Mm-hmm. And now coming out of it, I'm somebody who will no longer do that, and I will do something else. And in the process of that, you become a different person. You're coming out the other side of it is different than you were when you went in. And so that's why I say to accept failure, to accept those obstacles, because they actually make you a better person. And there is no successful person. There is no rich or wealthy person who went through life without obstacles.
There's just not. Yeah. And everyone listening for sure knows that. I'm curious, you said something earlier about success. I would love to know, what is your personal working definition of success right now? And I say working because I feel like as we all grow and change and different things are happening in our lives, what is success to us in the moment? It could be different a month from now. So right now, what's success to you?
I think it's always going to stay this. It's Earl Nightingale's definition of success. It's a progressive realization of a worthy ideal. Moving towards something, that's worthy. When we say it's worthy, it's something that you would literally give your life for, because that's what you're doing. You're trading your time and your hard work and your effort, and you're staying home from the parties, and you're doing things that 99% of the other, of the rest of the world isn't willing to do. And so even if you haven't really reached that level of success, as long as you're working toward it, you are successful. It's when you stop and you run in the other direction, that's when we can no longer call you successful.
I was having a conversation with a dear friend the other day. She was really upset because someone close to her made a really nasty comment about the type of parent she is, because her children have taken non-traditional paths. So like one of her kids is an entrepreneur, the other one of her kids does plays music, works in a bar, and might not be the vision of success at the moment in terms of financial success or whatever, but both of this person's children are happy. They like themselves, they are themselves. The person who made the nasty comment has two children who are workaholics, essentially have no lives, are stressed out all the time, and this person has placed an enormous amount of pressure on her children to be something that, who knows if that's what they actually even want to be.
Right.
But they're currently on the track of checking off the boxes to the traditional definition of success.
Yeah. And we have to go back and wonder, how many generations back does that go?
Yeah.
Right. And how many more generations will it go before someone says, okay, this needs to stop? Yeah. I'm tired of being a workaholic. I want to spend time with my friends, but that's the conditioning. That's the programming that needs to be unwound. Yeah.
I think I think we're seeing that be unwound right now. I haven't done a ton of studying about millennials. I think technically I'm in that gap, although maybe not. When does it end? 34?
I have no idea.
I think I'm just making the technical cut of being a millennial. Maybe not. But either way, I think that generation is really saying, no, I want to be able to do what I do. And I think there's pendulum swings too, right? Because it can swing into entitlement. I shouldn't have to ... fill in the blank. But
when you say I shouldn't have to ... what do you mean by that?
Oh, an entitlement, meaning that I shouldn't have to put in the work. I shouldn't have to deal with this thing that my parents dealt with, or I shouldn't have to, whatever is the thing.
Yeah. And I think these days there are more opportunities than our parents grew up with, of course. There's Instagram, there's Facebook, there's YouTube, there's all these different channels for actually building a business because, like we said, it's about providing solutions. Yep. And so, nothing against college by any means, but the whole you're going to go to college and be rich, which somebody told me many times in my life just is not true. It is not true. And it probably was true at one time, at least to be successful, but not to be super rich. But we have, again, so many channels and ways of helping people. When you can help people, there's money to be made.
Yeah, I mean, and we both live in the San Diego area. There's so many super young, amazingly brilliant entrepreneurs, like 20 to 25 even, that I'm like, damn, how is that person making so much money? And then even that reaction shows my own still conditioning that like success equals money. Right?
Yeah. They were ready to let go of the old paradigm that they grew up with, that they were probably programmed with. They say, I don't want to do that. They made the choice. I don't want to do that. I want to do this.
Yeah. So here's what I'm curious about. Solutions, finding solutions for people. If you can even explain it, because I don't know that I could explain my process. Maybe I could if I had to, and feel free to take a moment to think. But when you are in the like brainstorming phase and like finding a new solution or even identifying a new problem that you'd be interested enough in to find a solution for, what does that look like for you?
Oh, man. I think what it looks like to me is listening to people. Really listening to what their problems are, getting emails from people in my community about things that they want that they're not getting. When you get enough of those emails and it's like, okay, let's do something, as an internet marketer or whatever you call me, looking at some of the products that I put out. For example, I might do a podcast on digestion that 100,000 people listen to, and then we did a webinar and like 10,000 people signed up overnight. That tells me there's really strong evidence. There's a lot of people out there with digestive problems. So let's create an online summit about it. I did a show with Dr. Sarah Gottfried about vagina health and stuff like that, right? And hormones. And it got like 100,000 listens like in 2 weeks. And it was like, okay, this is a really popular problem, not a popular problem, but this is a big problem out there that definitely needs some fixing. So let's create something around that. So let's listen, but also be able to recognize where those problems intersect with your abilities and your passion. Yeah. Because if you're not passionate about it, then don't do it. Yes. If one of those people if you're in a business and people who follow you run into you in person and they want to talk about stuff in your business, if you want to run the other way, you probably want to get out of that business. And that's where I was with Underground Wellness. I no longer want to hang out with those people. Not that I have any problem with those people, but I didn't want to talk about gluten and the difference between celiac and non-celiac gluten sensitivity and lectins and all this stuff. Like, I was done. Yeah. Right. And, I think there's this cycle that I read about recently called create, persist, destroy, create, persist, destroy. And that's the cycle of our lives. I had to get to the point with Underground Wellness where I said, this isn't fulfilling me anymore. And I'm starting to get a little angry about it. Yes. And I think a lot of people are in that with their jobs right now. They've been in it for like 10, 20 years, maybe. They've been in that cycle of destroy. Like, I'm not digging this anymore. But then we have to make the choice to get rid of it in order to create something new. We got to dump out the glass and fill it up with something else. It takes courage to do that, but I would much rather make that choice to do it than to be stuck in something I don't want to do for the rest of my life. That sounds miserable. That's not what we were put here for.
Yeah. And I have a really strong opinion around that as well, that if you are making the choice to continue doing something you don't want to do, you forfeit any right to complain about it.
Yeah. It's your choice.
Because you're choosing it. Yeah.
Yeah. I love what Lisa Nichols did about this. You ever heard the Funding My Dream story?
No.
Okay. Lisa Nichols she was dead broke to the point where she couldn't even afford Pampers for her son. Right. Went to the ATM, insufficient funds, had to wrap her son up in a towel. Right. She made a choice right then that she was never going to be broke again. She took, I forget the percentage of her check every 2 weeks and put it into a bank account called Funding My Dream. And on the memo, on the check that she would send into the bank, she wrote Funding the Dream, right? And she never wanted to see her balance. But every time she sent in money, I want to say she sent in like 5 to 10% more every single time. So 2 years later, what happened was she went into the bank to check her balance because she didn't know what her balance was. And she had $63,000 in there. Right. I think we need to make that shift. And with that $63,000, she quit her job and moved to San Diego and created a whole new life for herself. Right. But what she said there was she shifted her perspective. Instead of making her job her enemy, she made her job her investor. Cool. And if we look at it that way, it gives us a reason to wake up in the morning and go to work and stop complaining because we have something on the other side to look forward to. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And, I have a logistical question you may or may not know the answer to because I could hear my women. My women are smart and they're going, yeah, but, right? So logistically, if she's already not making enough money, how do you work out then like putting aside or putting away money that isn't even already paying the bills that you have?
Cut something, right?
Yeah.
I got money and I still cut stuff.
Yeah.
I used to have cable in both rooms. A couple months ago, I was like, I don't use this. I can save whatever by cutting this, and it saved me like $60.
Yeah.
Right? You just got to cut something. You got to cut out, people always complain about how they can't afford stuff all the time, but for some reason they can be out getting drinks with friends all the time.
Yeah.
They can be wearing nice shoes all the time. They can be buying purses that they don't even put on the floor all the time. I don't understand how that works. I don't get it. I don't get how we've got everything on our phones and we got all these features and stuff. Like, you don't need all that stuff. Mm-hmm. Just cut it. Cut some stuff, save some money, and put it away. And over time, what's going to happen is that money is going to compound. And here's the thing. When you save your money, it changes your point of view, right? And what I mean by that is it gives you confidence. It primes the pump. It gets everything rolling, and it gives you that confidence where it's like, okay, it's possible to actually start saving money. I just had to make a choice, and then I had to do it, and now I've got money piling up.
Totally. So I'm hearing a couple of things here that maybe you're turning into a formula. Discipline. You just have to have some kind of willingness to make some kind of a choice, and then the discipline to actually stick with it.
Absolutely.
And then I lost the second part because I got really excited. I do this at least once every show where I literally forget the next thing that was going to come out of my mouth.
I do it all the time on my podcast. I'm like, what was I going to talk about next?
But you have to have the discipline and
sweating bullets in here.
Oh my God. It is pretty hot in San Diego today.
It's hot in San Diego, yeah.
And I'm by the water, so it's less hot, but you have to have the discipline. And maybe this is what it is. We actually need to spend a moment on discipline, because here's what I find. And actually, one of my Wild Soul women just this morning in one of our Facebook groups posted something like, oh my God, I just had this epiphany that the space between me and having what I want in so many places has been me not being willing to do what I need to do.
Absolutely.
Guess what, everybody? The Wild Soul Oracle deck is officially open for pre-order, and you can grab yours at wildsoulmovement.com/oracle. This is something I've been working on all year, which those of you who follow me on Facebook or Instagram know, as I've been posting some behind-the-scenes photos. But this Oracle deck was basically inspired by looking at our modern media-saturated world and observing that there's more than enough others trying to tell us what things mean and asking us to trust them. With this deck, I'm offering you untouched images of flowers, healing mantras and messages, illuminating reflection questions and rituals, each of which invites you to connect to the meaning, wisdom, and truth within and to trust yourself. The cards are beautiful. I had 2 amazing artists help us out with this. I wrote the guidebook while I was traveling through Europe in February. It is just beyond my wildest dreams. I hope you all love it too. Again, that link is wildsoulmovement.com/oracle. And this is our first run, so we do have limited availability. So if you want one, head over there and grab it because they are going to sell out. Now back to the show. So I'm pretty sure the thing that comes after discipline that I was thinking earlier is passion.
Right.
You have to want to do something. And everyone's different. I actually have always been a little envious of people who can just show up to work and then come home at the end of the day and leave work there. I'm not built that way. I think some people are, though.
Yeah. I mean, they certainly are. I'm not. And I think one of the reasons why I'm not is because I would be doing what I do for work anyway.
Yep. It's like the thing you can't not do.
Yeah, it's because I have such a high value on it. I love it. I love serving people, and I love reading about personal development and about how to make money and how to change your money mindset. Like, that's just what I do. If I was on vacation, you better believe that that's probably what I would be doing when I'm on vacation. It's just what I love to do. And I'm not sure if there's like an entrepreneur gene or something, right? But I've certainly got it, and I'm certainly willing to take the risks. Was I always like that? Probably not. But once you jump into the pool, and sometimes you have to kind of stick your toe in the pool real quick, and sometimes you're like, well, maybe it's a little too cold. But over time, as your passion and your willingness to do what you need to do to live a fulfilled life becomes greater than the fear, then you get the courage. Then you're like, okay, let's go ahead and do this. But if that doesn't happen, and if you don't understand that it's possible, then it's probably never going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to be disciplined. You got to take the action. You have to be passionate about it. And you have to understand that whenever you do start even to consider the choice of becoming somebody new, of creating a new circumstance in your life, your ego does not like that.
No.
Your ego is your identity. Your ego says this is right and this is wrong, and you need to stay inside of this box, because to get outside of that box is unsafe, it's unsecure, and it's scary. It lights up the amygdala in our brain. That's the fear center in the brain. That fear center makes the fear center. I love talking about the brain.
Great.
This is actually really cool. I learned this a few years ago from a book called Life Unlocked by Dr. Srini Pillay. He's brilliant, right? But in the brain, there is the amygdala, and the amygdala is the emotional center, but it prioritizes fear first, right? So that's
why does it do that?
For survival.
Okay.
We need to survive.
Right,
if it wasn't for that, we probably wouldn't have made it this far.
This is true.
Right?
Okay.
Because imagine not having any fear and like being caveman and going out of the cave and just being like, I don't care if there's a saber-toothed tiger out there. We're screwed.
See you later, caveman. Got it.
Done. We also have something called the anterior cingulate cortex, right? The ACC. And this is like it monitors our actions and our decisions for conflict.
Oh.
And then we have our prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for a lot of things like consciousness, but also for taking action in the motor cortex. Okay, so you have this conflict center, you have the fear center, and you have the action center. Here's what happens. If you have a conflict, so consciously you say, I want to start making more money and create a new business. But subconsciously, you're going, people with money are crazy and building a business is really hard work and you have a conflict. Yeah. It lights up that conflict center. The conflict center sends a message to the fear center and says, whoa, we've got something to be afraid of. Turn on. Now, all of them are connected to our motor cortex, to our action centers, right? What happens to the action centers? They start to shut down and slow down. And soon after you created this goal for yourself, you go, what happened to that goal that I had? What happened to that New Year's resolution that I made? It's literally going on in your brain. And so you actually have to recondition the subconscious mind, affirmations, creating an image, visualizing, feeling yourself into the state of your dream and your goal fulfilled every single day, because your subconscious mind can't tell the difference between what's real and what's not. So you're literally creating a brand new neural pathway. But that's huge. But as we talked about earlier, most important is knowing that it's possible, right? To say that, Sean Croxton back in the day, that was third person. Sean or I back in the day. Right?
Third try, got it.
That guy from the show back in the day was broke and didn't realize how obsessed he was with money, and, may at one point or another had to borrow money for rent, but now he created something where he gets paid to do what he loves. I know that it's possible, right? There were people for many years who couldn't break the 4-minute mile. They couldn't do it. Roger Bannister said, let me go ahead and do this. He did it. What happened after that? People started crushing the 4-minute mile. When we understand that something is possible, if we can just take one person and say, if they can do it, I can do it, because they're not made up of anything different than what I made up with. We all came into this world with the same stuff, right? And so it's all about using that stuff, becoming more conscious, and understand that everybody has greatness within them. Yeah. Everybody has abilities and gifts and talents and all that stuff. And you just have to bring it out of you, and it gets scary. And I'll tell you one more really interesting thing about the brain. I learned this last week from Srini Pillay's book, Your Brain and Business, is that cognitive dissonance that we feel when we decide to make the change. And what I mean by that is that fear, like that, oh my God, I'm going to do this and people are going to think I'm crazy and da-da-da-da. That cognitive dissonance is required. Because without that cognitive dissonance, then the left prefrontal cortex, or the left side of your brain, cannot become committed to the goal that you're about to endeavor upon. It's impossible. So, when we talk about the brain and we talk about all these different stages of your personal development, I like to compare it to like puberty, when different things are happening to your body. But if nobody told you that was going to happen, if nobody told you why that was happening, you'd be like, oh my God, you would freak out. Yeah. But this is just like making people aware of like, this is the process. Here's what happens, to accept it, to embrace it, and just know that on the other side, good things happen.
I love this. And, regardless of where someone is from, what they look like, what's their culture or whatever, there's a story of someone like you, you listening, not you, Sean, although Sean, there's probably stories of people like you too, although you're a unicorn, so maybe not. But find the person. Find the person like you. You can find someone like you. Find someone from your town. Find someone from your culture, your heritage, or whatever. There's just, I think it's, with access to the internet now in the year 2017, it's just like irresponsible to not do the due diligence to find the evidence that it's possible.
Yeah. Read books.
Yeah.
There's biographies behind me. Read people's biographies. Read successful people's biographies. When I grew up, I used to like to watch True Hollywood Story on E.
Yeah.
Did you ever watch that?
Yeah.
And it was like all these celebrities really screwed up stories, right? Everything that they went through, the big mistakes that they made, the money that they lost, the relationships that went bad, the drug rehab, all of that stuff. And they came out the other side of it stronger than they were before all that stuff happened. And they became successful. Now, I'm not saying you have to go to drug rehab by any means, but I'm just showing you that it's unavoidable. Like Les Brown says, it's unavoidable pain. If you're trying to avoid the pain, it's just simply not going to happen because you're never going to stay where you are. You're either moving forward or you're moving back. And so if you're afraid of the pain, you're going to have kind of a painful existence anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. There's
honestly.
There's
everybody. Most people these days are living a painful existence. They're just afraid of more pain, right? You just got to get into it. You got to dive in because honestly, that's life. Yeah.
There's a great, I don't listen. The irony of having a podcast is that I don't listen to a lot of other podcasts. No. I mean, I listen to my own shows when they go up because I love to go back and listen. But other than that, I don't. And so, but one of the podcasts I have listened to a handful of times is Elizabeth Gilbert's Big Magic. And she was having a conversation with Brene Brown. And one of the things she said, she heard from a therapist once was, we're all living in fear of the thing that already happened. So a lot of these fears, I mean, if someone has failed at anything, they might be afraid of failing at anything moving forward.
Yeah, because what the brain does, if we've experienced some pain somewhere, and if there's something that happens in our current reality that just barely reminds the brain of what happened back then, it makes a quick association and it goes, you know what? This is too similar. Let's stop. Let's shut it down. But we have to understand that we're not our past. You are not your past. If you are your past, you're going to end up living the same day over and over and over and over again. Yeah. You have the ability, and I keep feeling like I'm saying it over and over again, to choose to be somebody new moving forward at this moment.
And, and obviously I'm always going to interject with this for anyone listening. If you have any kind of like serious unresolved trauma, that's the only exception. Because when a trauma gets triggered and your nervous system gets overtaken, then actually you don't have the ability to choose necessarily in that moment. So if you're under nervous system hijack, that's like the one time you might not have access to these choices like Sean and I are talking about. And I always like to just take the moment to...
I got you.
Because, I'm in the personal development industry. It's fun. I'm actually really excited to no longer be a coach. I'm running a mentorship right now. When that's over, I'm hanging up the coaching tile just because it's not, like you were saying, it's just not what I'm interested in doing anymore. But, that's one of those things that drives me nuts when people are just like, everything's a choice. It's like, but there's this like...
There are always exceptions.
Yeah, there's always exceptions. Right. But let's not search for reasons to be the exception, but let's be responsible if we know we've got something going on that needs help.
And that's what I feel like a lot of people do. They're always doing the yeah buts. And the yeah buts are fine, right? But there's always going to be an exception. Yeah. And so, yes, there are generalities.
A friend of mine, Amateo, who was on the podcast a while ago, like last year, he said this thing once, not on the show. This is when we were hanging out. He's like, people who say yeah, but are like, it's like they're sitting in a jail cell holding the keys. Mm-hmm. Like they've got the keys on the inside.
Yeah, that's the ego saying, I don't want to change. And I'm going to come up for every reason for why I shouldn't have to change.
Yeah. So let's give the good listeners some proof. What are some fun things and some generous things that you don't mind sharing that you've been able to do with your money since no longer being broke?
And it's I think about this all the time because I feel like the perception of rich people would change tremendously if we were more forthcoming about the cool things that we do with our money.
Yeah.
But a lot of us don't like to talk about it because we don't want to make it seem like we're trying to draw attention to ourselves by the cool things that we're doing with our money. So I wish that would change, but I understand it because I do the same thing. Yeah. When I was young, my parents got divorced when I was 10 years old. And I was going to private school at the time. And of course, we could afford it at the time my parents were together. My dad took off shortly after divorce, didn't see him again until I was 17. He didn't give us a dime. But I stayed in private school. And it never really dawned on me, like, where is this money coming from, right? I just knew I was going to school, right? So I go from my elementary private school to high school, which is a Catholic private school. Again, never really thought about it. I knew I would see my mom around school kind of helping out and all that stuff. So I figured we got something for that. But maybe 6-7 years ago, we were sitting at Thanksgiving dinner, and I come to find out that through tuition assistance, I was able to go to school for free. Had no idea at all. And in that moment, I said, okay, when I can afford it, I'm going to be one of the biggest contributors to this tuition assistance program at St. Joe's.
Cool.
And that's what I do. Right. I attend their tuition assistance dinner every year. I make my contribution. I'm active with the school. I've given to my Boys and Girls Club that I grew up in. That really kept me off the streets. I plan on giving a lot more there. Pencils of Promise built a school in Guatemala a couple years ago. Like, my goal right now is to build a school every quarter. That would be an amazing thing. And then once we achieve that, then it's going to become every month. That's huge. We actually got to go to Guatemala and like see the school. And it was my mom's Christmas present. And so there's like a plaque, with her name on it and stuff. And she got to come and be at the school. And it was so awesome. More recently, I'm not sure if you've heard about this, but I don't think I've told anybody about this. There was a woman. Did you hear about that party in La Jolla where that guy just lost his mind and started shooting people at a pool party?
I did not.
Yeah. So guy starts shooting people at a pool party because he broke up with his girlfriend, and girlfriend was on the phone while he's shooting people, and killed a woman. And that woman had 3 kids, I think 12, 13, and 14. And these 12, 13, and 14-year-old girls don't have a mom anymore. And it bugged the hell out of me. And so I saw on the news that there was a GoFundMe for her and her kids. And, I sat there at bed. I think it was like 11:30 at night. And there was a difference between their $10,000 goal and where they were. And so I filled in the difference. That's and awesome. It was a few bucks. So it's just the ability to do those things. I have a nice home. I have pretty ass cars in the garage. But nothing makes me feel better than those things I just told you about.
Yeah.
And I wish that there were more people who got to experience that instead of thinking that people who have money only do bad stuff with it.
Yeah. This phrase was dropped on me by my friend Carrie Samuels, who's also been on the podcast. And when this clicked into place, I was like, oh, I could be okay with wanting money now. But the more I have, the more I can share. And,
right.
It's a really good point. It wasn't Mother's Day that long ago. And one of the things I posted that I love about my mom that she taught me growing up is, if you're having a bad day, even if you're not, just do nice things for people, but don't tell anyone, because it's not about that you did it. And so I enjoyed, I could tell, even if it was just a little bit, you were a little uncomfortable just now telling us about all the things you've done. And you're right. We don't talk about it so much because people want to be humble, and because we've all seen the person who does make a big deal about this donation they've made or whatever. And you could tell it's did you do it because you wanted to, or did you do it because you wanted everyone to think you were a great person? And so, I could tell, I asked you because I wanted to know, and your mild discomfort that I could sense kind of shows me that, you're a good person and you're doing this because you really want to. And same, over the last few years, I love GoFundMe, by the way.
I do and I don't. But go ahead.
Well, you can't write it off. It's not a tax write-off. But again, that's not why I'm doing things. So I just love, and I live in a community where there's always someone with some outrageous medical bill that they can't pay. And so whenever I see one of those posts, I love to just be all right, I could put something on it, Yeah,
that's what I like it for. Here's what I don't like it for, and this kind of irks me, is if somebody's trying to take a personal development program for a weekend and it's $3,500. Don't go social panhandling on people. Don't be looking for handouts, right? I would respect it more if somebody said, if you give $50, I'll come to your house and wash your car every weekend for a month, right? If there's some type of exchange, then I'm totally down with that. I have a friend who wanted to do a course, and she sent me the link and all that stuff. I hope you can contribute. And I'm like, I'm gonna keep it real with you. No, if you want to come to my house, here are 5 things that you can do for me, and I will gladly give you some money. So she came over to my house a few days later and she ironed my shirts.
That's awesome.
And I gave her a check, and so again, I have a love-hate relationship with GoFundMe. But
well, I think that's actually one of the great values I did learn about money was because when I was little, if I wanted anything, my mom would be like, cool, what do you want to do for it? So like
exactly.
Wash the car, vacuum, whatever. And she would overpay me for sure.
Yes, totally.
But I learned that if I want something, I had to do something for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. And so I think that's the way it should be.
Yeah. It's good stuff, Sean Croxton. Thank you so much. Is there anything I didn't ask you, either related to the subject or anything else you got going on in your world right now that you're like dying to share?
No, I mean, I got the Quote of the Day show going on right now. It's a 6-day-a-week show. I play short clips from motivational talks. People love it. It gets more and more popular every week. So if you want to start off in the morning and just hear some positive wisdom to kind of get your day going, listen to that. I don't do the sessions anymore. I've retired from interviews for now. It was just sucking up way too much of my time because I'm a totally neurotic when it comes to prep.
I read this somewhere once that you 15 hours per show to prep?
Oh, that's way low. Who said that? No.
It's like, it was a post on Instagram or something.
It's like 25, 30, sometimes 40.
God.
It's terrible. But you know what? That's why the interviews were so good.
Yeah.
You know, people love those interviews because I'm able to like really get deep with who I'm interviewing. But I found myself, it was actually 2 weeks ago, I woke up, I was going to be interviewing Danielle Laporte. And I woke up from it and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like I am fully and completely done. I'm spending more time helping somebody to promote their business than I am working on my own business. Mm-hmm. I think I need to get my priorities straight. And so I cut that one. Now it's just Quote of the Day and it's taken off.
I love that. Good for you. And again, and thank you also for just showing through example, just by some of the stories that you've shared, that it's okay to evolve in whatever it is you do. A lot of people listening are entrepreneurs or have a desire to be an entrepreneur. A lot of people aren't, but you will always evolve over time, right? You get to change your mind, you get to pivot, and it doesn't, I'm curious, did you struggle with any judgment? Like, but that's what I'm known as. That's what I must do because that's who people think I am and what they expect of me.
Yeah, that's what kept me in it for that extra 6 months, maybe.
Got it.
Because people expected that from me. Yeah. And at the same time, I got so many emails over the previous 7 years about how the information from that show literally saved people's lives.
Yeah.
Like literally like, yo, we heard a show and we went to the doctor and had this heart test done and we had like 98% blockage of a coronary artery and they admitted him immediately and did surgery. And if we didn't hear your show, my husband would have died.
That is unbelievable.
So that's a lot of responsibility. But at the same time, I had to go, I'm getting angry about this.
Yeah.
This is something that I don't want to get like super apathetic about it. I just want to just move on to something else. And a lot of people left. A lot of followers unfollowed. I got some mean emails about it, but whatever, because what I do now, and it's been about 18 months or so, I'm so happy and grateful for what I get to do. This shit is dope. Like, I love this.
Until the next thing, right? Or maybe there's not going to be a next thing. And I always find that so funny. The people who want to be so angry about this thing that they weren't paying for that's no longer available.
Isn't that crazy? Here's just one more thought on this one. This is what I learned from Lisa Nichols as well, is that, passions have seasons. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that season just has to end. You just got to recognize, not even recognize when that season is fully over. Like, when summer is like winding down. You got to recognize like summer's winding down. It's time for a new season. So let's do something new and to be enthusiastic about it, especially if that's where your passion, your service, and your impact truly intersect, and it just feels good. I feel fulfilled every single day by what I get to do.
I love that. And like, that's success. So in our show notes, we will put the links. We'll catch all the books you mentioned, all the titles, all the things to your podcast. The main website is SeanCroxton.com. So anyone listening, you want more Sean Croxton in your life, you can find him on the show notes page. Sean, thank you so much. This was super fun. I love your passion and enthusiasm for things. It's like very palpable. It kept getting me more and more excited.
Thank you so much. Was it unicorn worthy?
It was cool unicorn. All right, it's fine. You're a unicorn. I'll give it to you.
Thank you, Liz. Appreciate it.
We'll talk to you later.
It's like in many ways we become, as we heal this, we give birth to ourselves. We express that amazing little girl inside of us with her innocence and wisdom and purity and beauty. I mean, she's the connection to source, right? That little girl inside of us, she's connected to the earth, to all things. And we also get in touch with it, I think, like a crone aspect of us, which is like that fierce, not taking any bullshit.
Totally.
And these two parts of us become integrated into this amazing goddess shaman archetype. That's kind of how I experience it. That's like all of it. That's like unapologetically unconventional, you know, not afraid to be who she is, says no, doesn't tolerate, but also is fiercely loving and embracing and, you know, not afraid to be herself.